I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and this is the HTC One VX, a mid-range phone now available on AT&T. Before we get into the full review, special thanks to our partners at Best Buy Mobile for giving us devices like this for use in our One Paw Bandit giveaway game, which we give to you on the site at instantwin.phonedog.com. When you walk into Best Buy Mobile, you'll walk out working. They're going to get your email, your web, your contacts, and settings set up. So when you walk out the door, you're good to go at Best Buy Mobile. Is the One VX worth buying, or should you go with the Lumia 920, or perhaps another Android or Windows Phone option, or even iOS on AT&T? We'll find out in part one of the review, which starts right now. The HTC One VX, kind of comparatively speaking, is a little bit different from every other device in the One series because, you know, HTC started and they said, okay, we're going to make the One series devices. They're going to be the flagship devices for HTC, the ones that kind of embody everything that HTC believes in. And then they kind of mixed it up, or at least, let me put it this way. They said that, you know, that was going to be the main line. We're not going to do any more. We're not going to do as many devices as we've done in years past, and they've held to that word. They haven't done as many devices as they have in years past. That said, the One line's kind of watered down a little bit in comparison to what we originally thought it was going to be from HTC's wording. That said, this is a great device, don't get me wrong, but it's interesting to see them go from at the beginning of the year when the One series came out to now, where there are a couple of different devices. Then we kind of see some offshoots of the One series like the Evo 4G LTE, the Droid Incredible 4G LTE, the Droid DNA, and more. So you look back at the year in review and you're kind of like, okay, they had the One series, then they branched out, and there are obviously flagship devices like the Droid DNA that aren't part of the One series. Where do they fit in? That's something you have to figure out yourself. Here's the HTC One VX. This is a nice device. Again, don't get me wrong, really impressed with this device. Love seeing this kind of competition in the marketplace, not just on the high-end scale, but on the mid-range scale as well, though it's hard to believe that this device is actually considered a mid-range device by any means. Specs-wise, you got some nice specs here. 1.2 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU, 8 gigabytes of internal memory, 5 megapixel camera on the back with 1080p HD video recording, a 4.5-inch QHD display with 960 by 540 pixels, 245 pixels per inch, and then you've got Android 4.0 with HTC Sense version 4. It also has a 1,810 milliamp hour non-removable battery, and it's got 4G LTE connectivity on AT&T. 2-year agreement gets you this device for $49.99 in this color and in red as well, so you can get the white or the red. And even though this looks like a battery door, it actually just comes off to show off the micro SD card and the micro SIM card slot. There's no user removable battery on this device. So it's a nice device all around. I'm really impressed with, you know, what $50 gets you now as opposed to what it got you 2 years ago, and it's got some great specifications. That said, it's not really going to go head-to-head against the Galaxy S3 or the Note 2 or the One X Plus or the Droid DNA or the LG Optimus G, etc., but still it provides a nice device that's really well built for people that want a mid-range to high-end a mid-range to a low high-end smartphone at a good price. Here it is, Android 4.0, HTC Sense version 4. You've got the typical AT&T stuff pre-installed that you're probably familiar with. Code scanner, Kindle, Family Map, Locker, Navigator ready to go. You've got Google Plus integration here along with device help, live TV, My AT&T, some stuff that I've installed, SoundHound, TuneIn Radio, YP Mobile, Wi-Fi hotspot, and more. So again, interesting to work with this device after working with like the Droid DNA and the One X devices that are shipping right now with Android 4.1 and Sense 4 Plus. You get two benefits with those. You get a newer version of Android and you get a newer version of HTC's user interface as well. So you get some stuff I'm used to working with on like the Droid DNA that's not included over here, and you're like, it's kind of interesting to go from that back to a lower version of Sense. That said, if you're walking into this for the first time, you're buying this for $50, you're probably not going to notice that, and if you're coming in from an older smartphone, anything is going to be an improvement. That said, I do find myself missing things. We'll go into text messaging, for example, here, and I have a draft that I sent yesterday or was getting ready to type up and send yesterday when I was shooting a video on this device. But for example, in the menu on Android 4.1 with Sense 4 Plus, you can customize the text message background. Instead of a white background, you can make it different colors. You can make the text boxes different colors as well. Unfortunately, you can't do that on the ones over here with Sense 4. So that's a little something like that. I find little personalization things like that I'm missing from time to time. Speaking of personalization, you got Sense 4, like I said over here, Android 4.0, and you do get your display gestures and buttons. You got 3 capacitive buttons down at the bottom, back, home, and then recent applications, which I actually have configured right now as a menu button. So when I'm in messaging, for example, I tap it once to show off menu, tap it and hold it to show off recent applications. Design-wise, really a beautifully designed device for $49.99. It's got metal around the sides, a volume rocker over here on the right side, your micro USB charging port at the bottom, 3.5mm headphone jack up top with a power button. Of course, your camera on the back. And this is a Beats audio device by HTC. So if you have Beats headphones, you can take advantage of the integration there through HTC's music player. So again, through HTC's music player, put your music in that if you want to get the Beats audio integration, and you can activate it from the settings on the device itself. So personalization as well, pretty comprehensive on this device. You've got your skins here. And you can see HTC skins when it loads up. Aluminum, serene, matte, and more. You don't get quite as many skins again as you get on the Sense 4 Plus version, but you do get a few to work with out of the box. Wallpaper, lock screen style as well. I have it set to the productivity lock screen where it shows me my calls, weather, messages, emails, and more, and I can change in settings what I see. So I display calls from all contacts, messages from all contacts, calendar events, and I can change this around and either do a group, like a favorite. If I have my girlfriend or my mom or dad set as my favorite, I can set it where it displays calls from only my favorites. So all the calls that I'm getting for work or meeting requests or things like that aren't showing off up here in the lock screen when I turn it off and back on. But here's an idea of what the lock screen looks like right now. You don't get the weather option out of the box like you do on HTC Sense 4 Plus, but still a really clean, good look. And again, like I've said before, I'm comparing this to Sense 4 Plus and Android 4.1, but for the vast majority of people walking into an AT&T store, they're not going to know that difference between the two. So obviously, it's a great price point, and some sacrifices have to be made to keep devices competitive. You wouldn't want all the features on this at $50, or nobody be buying the One X Plus. That'd be a bad news decision for HTC. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these and wondering why it doesn't have some of the specifications as the One X Plus or the Droid DNA. That's your reasoning right there. So 1,810 milliamp hour battery. I am interested to see long term how the battery performs. I haven't had it long enough to really give you a true battery life indicator, so stay tuned for more of that on PhoneDog.com. But what I will say, lower resolution display here that's actually smaller than the One X. It's a 4.5-inch display as opposed to 4.7, and it's not an HD display, it's a QHD display, but it's got a bigger battery than the original One X. It has a 1,810 milliamp hour battery. So my sense here, it's kind of like a supercharged One S in a way when you look at it, the specs in comparison to the battery life. So I'm hoping that the battery will last much longer. That said, I really wish HTC would include a physical percentage up there so I could see what my battery was on a given day without having to look and kind of guesstimate based on an arbitrary battery meter. So PhoneDog will load this up. I'm going to load up PhoneDog.com. Since keyboard continues to work well, PhoneDog.com, there we go. Since keyboard continues to work well, portrait to landscape transitions, despite having a slightly slower clocked processor, it's an impressive performance all around. Pinch to zoom responsive, portrait to landscape nice and fast. You're not going to need to slow down with either one of these. And you got your tabs up here and your menu up top as well with your back, your home button, or back forward rather, and add to buttons, along with some goodies down here, things like find on page, view desktop site, enable flash player, and more. So all in all, this thing is really fast despite, again, having a slower clock speed. Don't let that fool you. Again, at the price point, this is one of the best devices you can get on AT&T if you're interested in Android. So we'll compose a message as well, and you can see the keyboard, the quick brown fox, and of course you have the swipe-like functionality as well, which I'm terrible at. Happy. There we go. Quick Brown Fox, I was trying to say is happy, but it's not showing up on the keyboard. You have the trace-like capabilities over here on this, and of course, I can back out and install other keyboards if I see fit. Things like SwiftKey, third-party alternatives from Google Play, and more. So you got the options there, as opposed to something like a Windows Phone where you have to work with the stock keyboard that Microsoft's included in the OS, or perhaps iOS 6, for example. You've got some options and some choice there. Again, though, I will say HTC's keyboard is much improved, and it gets even better on Android 4.1. Really impressed with it on Android 4.1. A huge night and day improvement on stuff like the Droid DNA and the One X. But over here, still reasonably easy to use. Hey there, how are you doing? Stay tuned for part 2, speed test, camera settings, and more on the One VX review, part 2. So stay tuned.